Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me here, Zach. I'm David Brown, and I'm running for State College Borough Council. I decided to enter this race and go for the office for a number of reasons. Number one, I'm recently retired and certainly have the energy and the time, I think, to devote to it. But I think more importantly for that, I think public service has always been a sort of a personal value of mine over a number of years, and this seemed to be a good way to express that. And I think number three, I'm very grateful for what the borough's done for me. I've lived here, raised a family, worked professionally, and owned a home for 30-some years. And I'd like to see the good parts of State College flourish and thrive and go on into the future. And I think I'm also probably going to be running because I think there's a lot of issues that the borough faces that by virtue of past employment and job skills and so on, I think I have a lot of skill sets that are going to be useful and transportable to helping the borough with some of the problems it faces. So those are among the reasons why I've decided to run this year. And finally, and not the least important, I've been asked by a number of people in the community to run for this office. So. Well, I certainly see, and I think a number of the candidates see the same thing. The principal or a very, very dominant issue is the financial crisis that State College Borough is getting into. And it's been said many times, many ways, but we have a budget shortfall that's not going away and it's probably going to continue for the next 3 or 4 years unless we do something about it. And that's certainly, I think, crying out for some serious attention. I don't think we can solve it by just continuing to spend down the reserves. That's not a good solution. And in the short run, I think we face the problem of hard kind of choice. Do we raise taxes again, or do we begin to cut back on services? And I don't think either of those have any particular appeal, especially because taxes were just raised last year for the borough residents, and we've got another heavy tax load that we're facing as residents because of the school board's decision to go ahead with the high school. So that's going to make a big crunch. And more and more, I think part of our important constituency here is a lot of retired folks in State College, and I think they're going to be hard hit by tax increases and so on. And the services, on the other hand, I think are considered one of the strong points of the borough, and and the people who deliver them are very, very, very valuable too. So I think it's, again, not an easy solution to cut services either. So I think we have to come up with some other ways of addressing this problem. Well, I joined some of the folks who are talking about trying to get the Harrisburg legislature to respond to our problem and to let us here in State College do what 2 other cities in the Commonwealth do, namely Philly and Pittsburgh, and that is they charge a retail alcohol and hotel tax. And we'd very much like to have that authority, that taxing authority here, and I think it would go a long way in helping us address some of the financial problems if we could get that. And that would be particularly relevant on some of the big influx weekends, football games, and St. Patty's Day, and those kind of things, which bring a huge number of people in, that drain down the services of the borough, and in some ways don't pay anything for the services that they incur. So. I'm thinking of other solutions, too, that I think might be worth exploring, one of which is Penn State pays a good deal of money to the borough every year. It's an in lieu payment, or it goes by other names, but I think it'd be good to look at that and to see if we could renegotiate that. And I think the negotiation period for that comes up this next year. It's something that was decided once every 10 or 20 years. And I think there's some problems with that because it's a fixed amount of money rather than what I would like to see as an amount that's pegged to inflation or the cost of living, and something that would move up every year. I think that would help a great deal too. I also think that, I think we need to look more carefully at some of the expenditures that the borough makes, and more critically decide if the borough can afford, if nothing else, some of these things. And some examples. It's interesting. I'm told that a popular request in the borough is, for instance, to put in high-speed elevators in the parking garages. And as trivial as that might sound, it's not a trivial item. It would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 to put in one high-speed elevator. So that's just maybe a low level, but I think interesting example of what we can and can't afford to do here in the borough. There have been other things in that vein that I don't think make a lot of sense. I also think it would make sense to explore some other revenue sources, one of which is a flourishing sort of commerce these days in State College is what's come to be known as the Airbnbs, and that is a number of households are advertising online to rent their house to, like on a football game weekend, to a large number of people in return for a large sum of money. None of those are regulated or licensed by the borough, and none of them pay any fees for the profits that they make. And I think it would be wise for a lot of reasons to look into regulating that a bit more and generating some fees from that sort of thing. So I also think it makes a lot of sense to begin to try to really make it a bigger or greater state college in the strong sense of the word. That is, we should consolidate more with some of the adjacent townships and boroughs, instead of having a lot of duplicated and overlapping services, and we could, I think, wisely share a lot more resources and so on, and in some ways save some money that way. So those are among the ideas I think would make some sense for, at least to explore more seriously. The trouble is the legislature in Harrisburg on the first item has a real, I call it a stranglehold on what towns and municipalities can do. And that's not the only issue, the taxing. There are other ones that, one of the issues that's come up a lot, of course, is the danger zone there at Park Avenue and Atherton Street, where 3 people have been killed in the last year or so. And one of the things that the common sense tools that I think would help the State College Police would be the ability to use radar for the speeders and so on there. Well, interestingly, in Pennsylvania, nobody but the state police is allowed to use radar, and we'd like to see our local police use it, but that again is controlled by Harrisburg. So, and there's other examples. Some people talked about wanting to put a camera red light there at that intersection to do it, but again, that decision is also something that the legislature has to get permission for. So my point is, I think there are a number of ways in which we have to persuade and induce the legislature to respond to our needs as a town much more robustly than they do, and not to keep so tight a control on some of these issues and so on. I have some concerns about the way development has tended to go in the borough, and it goes in a fashion that I, for lack of a better word, call piecemeal or ersatz development. That is to say, a parcel of land will become available for whatever reason, and some developer will eye it and buy it, and then appeal to have a zoning variance to build another high-rise, and usually it's a student high-rise there. So I think that's been a real source of problems in the borough for a lot of reasons. And it's not the way I think development needs to go on into the future. And one of the problems it creates is, a lot of neighborhood degradation that especially the residents complain about. But that's not the only problem. It creates parking problems and noise problems, and The other thing is, it doesn't really generate a whole lot of revenues for the borough anyway, which is a problem that we still have to address. So I think development should go in a radically different way. I think development should be done in what I call a comprehensive or holistic kind of way. Somebody looking at the big picture and deciding what is good for large areas of the town, not just a single little piece, and especially large areas that are generated by what's good for the abiding or permanent residents of State College, not for the transient undergraduate student population. And that means I think we need to revision the kind of buildings we build. They talk about building places for young professionals, for entrepreneurs, or people like yourself, or young families and so on. But we have to induce developers to build such places and not to say, oh, we'll put in a building and there may be a floor for those kind of folks, but the rest will be undergraduate students. It doesn't work that way. But beyond that, I think we need we need new visioning for better restaurants, better clothiers, better entertainment sources, better something other than more fast foods, high rises, and bars in this town to again appeal to the whole strata of those who live here permanently, from the retired right down to young families. And we have to incentivize developers to reclaim a lot of the classic housing in this town, not turn it into more student rentals, but in fact to make it habitable for the workforce, for instance, to make it habitable for the young families who want to live and work here in the borough. So, and I think we need to have development take place that makes sense for those who want to live downtown. We don't have a good grocery store downtown for people to buy. You know, if people want to buy a lot of supplies to live downtown, they have to go out to the other townships, and I think we need to stop that emigration of merchants and residents to the adjacent boroughs. So that's what I think about development. And you know, in the way of that, I think is a lot of resistance, because in the narrow view, there's the most profit is available to those who build or turn their homes into student housing, and those folks are reluctant to have us go in a different direction. But so that's what I think. Well, I am really grateful actually for the chance to run for Borough Council, and among other things, to really get out and walk all the neighborhoods and meet a lot of interesting folks and hear a lot of interesting questions. And you know, the range of the questions has been the biggest surprise for me, from asking where I stand on war, to where I stand on pro-life, to where I stand on taxes and so on. So it's been quite a rich and fascinating learning experience. But I'm grateful for the opportunity, and if elected, I plan on working diligently and conscientiously to try to help make it, along with the other council members, a much better place to work, live, and raise families in.